Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our January 4th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. Lesson number 4. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things that I see in this place. All right, so let's read our lesson today, and it's going to be a little different than the last 3 days. Hope you've been having fun. Just as you randomly look around and just say your lesson. Yesterday is I do not understand anything I see in this place. Well, today we're going to use our thoughts. So let's look what it says. Unlike the preceding ones, these exercises do not begin with the idea for the day. In these practice periods, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. Okay, so we're going to have a quiet time of introspection. We're going to look inside. Don't necessarily have to close your eyes, though it might be helpful. Then apply the idea to them, to your thoughts. If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as subjects for the idea. Do not, however, select only the thoughts you think are bad. And that word bad is in quotes. You will find, if you train yourself to look at your thoughts, that they represent such a mixture that in a sense none of them can be called good in quotes or bad in quotes. This is why they do not mean anything. Paragraph 2. In selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is required. Do not be afraid to use good thoughts as well as bad. None of them represents your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. Your real thoughts are being covered up by them. Miracle impulses have a hard time reaching consciousness because of all the filters and blocks we put up with our mind. So we're trying to learn to at least recognize what we're thinking and then tell ourselves these thoughts do not mean anything. They're like the things that I see in this place. Okay? None of them represents your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. The, in quotes, good ones, of which you are aware, are but shadows of what lies beyond. And shadows make sight difficult. The bad ones, in quotes, the bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. You do not want either. Okay, so even our good thoughts, he says, are shadows of what lies beyond. Our inheritance is so incredibly rich and beautiful and good that even our best thoughts that we're familiar with are just shadows compared to the brightness of our identity in God. Paragraph 3. This is a major exercise and will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different form. So remember, this is a major exercise, this looking at our thoughts. The aim here is to train you in the first steps toward the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. In using your thoughts for application of the idea for today, identify each thought by the central figure or event it contains. For example, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this room or wherever you are. Okay? So this thought about, and whatever you're thinking about, just tell yourself this thought about blank, name it. Does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this place. And the last paragraph. You can also use the idea for a particular thought which you recognize as harmful. This practice is useful, but is not a substitute for the more random procedure to be followed for the exercises. In other words, look at all your thoughts, not just the ones that are obviously robbing you of your joy. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You are too inexperienced as yet to avoid a tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied. Further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, you may find the suspension of judgment in connection with thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat these exercises more than 3 or 4 times during the day. We will return to them later. Okay, so we're only asked to do them, what's it say, about 4 times today. And so you're going to take you a minute, and I would encourage you just to stop what you're doing, close your eyes, and think, what am I thinking about right now? And just be aware of that. And then tell yourself when you've spotted the main thing you're thinking of, and you may only get one thing that you really can put your finger on in 1 minute. That's not very long. You might get 2 or 3 things, but whatever your mind's thinking about, tell yourself, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this place. All right? Okay, so be sure to do that. You students that have been through this already once, I'd still encourage you to do it the way that he says it, as if you haven't really gained a whole lot of clarity. Start at the beginning and make small incremental movements again, like you did last year. But when you're done with the meditation, or with the practice period, as he calls it, if you feel like it, you students that are used to spending time in the quiet, because you've already been through the book once, well then go ahead and do that afterwards. But go ahead and do the lesson the way he says, and only give it a minute or 2. But then if you feel like you want to just stay and bathe yourself like you're so accustomed to in the presence of God, well then by all means do so. But do that afterwards. And do that at least a couple times a day for the ones of you that are proficient or have been using meditation for a while. But don't feel like you have to. You can start at the beginning if you want it, and just do what he says. If you're accustomed to remembering throughout the day, every hour, or thereabouts, well, you can continue doing that. And I want each of you to follow your own internal guidance best you can, though, because there's no set way when you're doing the book the second time. And I don't want to be, I don't want you to feel like you have to do it a certain way, but I would encourage you to do it the way he's saying to do it, primarily. And let's go back and take a look now at our text, and hopefully you finished chapter 1 in your reading. And if you'll give me just a few minutes, I'm going to just read a few highlights that I've marked as for a few pages. I don't think we'll get the whole chapter talked about, but let me just read a few. I like Jesus doing the talking. I don't really like doing a whole lot of talking about it. Number 37, Miracle Principle 37. Miracles, that's on page 9. That's in the introduction to miracles. Miracle Principle 37. Miracles are examples of right thinking. Reality contact at all levels becomes strong and accurate, thus permitting correct delineation of intra and interpersonal boundaries. As a result, the doer's perceptions are aligned with truth as God created it. 38. A miracle is a correction factor introduced into false thinking by me. It acts as a catalyst, shaking up erroneous perception and reorganizing it properly. This places man under the atonement principle, where his perception is healed. Until this has occurred, revelation of the divine order is impossible. Miracle Principle 39. The spiritual eye is the mechanism of miracles. The spiritual eye is the mechanism of miracles. because what it perceives is true. It perceives both the creations of God and the creations of man. Among the creations of man, it can also separate the true from the false by its ability to perceive totally rather than selectively. It thus becomes the proper instrument for reality testing, which always involves the necessary distinction between the false and the true. Miracle Principle 40. I'm not going to read all these, but I just wanted to read a little bit out of several of these. The miracle dissolves errors because the spiritual eye identifies error as false or unreal. This is the same as saying that by perceiving light, darkness automatically disappears. Darkness is lack of light, as sin is lack of love. Isn't that a nice way of looking at it? Darkness is lack of light, as sin is lack of love. Down in Miracle Principle 41, he says, the creation is whole, and the mark of wholeness is holiness. Miracle Principle 42, wholeness is the perceptual content of miracles. It thus corrects or atones for the faulty perception of lack anywhere. As you perceive, so shall you behave. That's why we want to get our perceptions right, so that we can behave as children of God. 64. The golden rule asks you to behave toward others as you would have them behave toward you. This means that the perception of both must be accurate. The golden rule is the rule for appropriate behavior. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive accurately, because appropriate behavior depends on lack of level confusion. The presence of level confusion always results in variable reality testing and therefore in variability in behavioral appropriateness. Since you and your neighbor are equal members of the same family, as you perceive both, so you will behave toward both. The way to perceive for golden rule behavior is to look out from the perception of your own holiness and perceive the holiness of others. The emptiness engendered by fear should be replaced by love, because love and its absence are in the same dimension, and correction cannot be undertaken except within a dimension. Catch that. The emptiness engendered by fear should be replaced by love, because love and its absence are in the same dimension, and correction cannot be undertaken except within a dimension. Otherwise, there has been a confusion of levels. Death is a human affirmation of a belief in hate, or level confusion. That is why the Bible says there is no death, and why I demonstrated that death does not exist. I came to fulfill the law by reinterpreting it. The law itself, if properly understood, offers only protection to man. It is those who have not yet changed their minds who entered the hellfire concept into it. Miracle Principle 43. I mean, we're not reading all these. We're just kind of skimming through it. I'm in paragraph 67, Miracle Principle 43. A major contribution of miracles is their strength in releasing man from his misplaced sense of isolation, deprivation, and lack. Miracles are affirmations of sonship, which is a state of completion and abundance. Whatever is true and real is eternal and cannot change or be changed. The soul is therefore unalterable because it is already perfect. But the mind can elect the level it chooses to serve. The only limit which is put on its choice is that it cannot serve two masters. Miracle Principle 44. Miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind. By being one, this state of mind goes out to anyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself. Miracle Principle 45. The miracle is an expression of an inner awareness of Christ and the acceptance of His atonement. Miracle Principle 46. A miracle is never lost. It touches many people you do not even know, and sometimes produces undreamed of changes in forces of which you're not even aware. Miracle Principle 47. Miracle-mindedness means miracle readiness. Readiness means that you should always keep your perceptions straight, so that you will always be ready, willing, and able. These are the essentials for listen, learn, and do. You must be ready to listen, willing to learn, and able to do. Let's see. On Miracle Principle 48, awe is an inappropriate response to miracles. The miracle, on the other hand, is the sign of love among equals. I'm in paragraph 78 if you want to follow along. Hopefully you've already read this, and this is just some highlights. If you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to, but you don't have to. If you just want to listen in, you'll eventually get it, because you can go back and listen to last year's if you want. Or you could just do the workbook and not get all the text. I just want you to feel free to do what your internal guidance is suggesting for you to do the best you can. The miracle, on the other hand, is a sign of love among equals. Equals cannot be in awe of one another because awe implies inequality. It is therefore an inappropriate reaction to me. That's Jesus talking. He says we're equals. He says an elder brother is entitled to respect for his greater experience and a reasonable amount of obedience for his greater wisdom. He is also entitled to love because he is a brother, and also to devotion if he is devoted. It is only my devotion that entitles me to yours. There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The main difference between us as yet is that I have nothing else. This leaves me in a state of true holiness, which is only a potential in you. No man cometh unto the Father but by me is among the most misunderstood statements in the Bible. It does not mean that I am in any way separate or different from you except in time, which does not really exist at all. Actually, the quotation is more meaningful if it is considered on a vertical rather than a horizontal axis. Regarded along the vertical, man stands below me and I stand below God. In the process of, in quotes, rising up, I am higher. This is because without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass. I bridge the distance as an elder brother to man on the one hand, and as a son of God on the other. And we'll pick up on Miracle Principle 49 tomorrow. Let us let me mark that. And now let's go take a look at our manual for teachers, which we're reading through. I hope you all are enjoying this. I just love this. Who are their pupils? Certain pupils have been assigned to each of God's teachers, and they will begin to look for him as soon as he has answered the call. They were chosen for him because the form of the universal curriculum that he will teach is best for them in view of their level of understanding. His pupils have been waiting for him, for his coming is certain. Again, it is only a matter of time. Once he has chosen to fulfill his role, they are ready to fulfill theirs. Time waits on his choice, but not on whom he will serve. When he is ready to learn, the opportunities to teach will be provided for him. In order to understand the teaching-learning plan of salvation, it is necessary to grasp the concept of time which the course sets forth. Atonement corrects illusions, not the truth. Therefore, it corrects what never was. Further, the plan for this correction was established and completed simultaneously, for the will of God is entirely apart from time. So is all reality, being of Him. The instant the idea of separation entered the mind of God's Son, in that same instant was God's answer given. In time, this happened very long ago. In reality, it never happened at all. The world of time is a world of illusions. What happened long ago seems to be happening now. Choices made long since appear to be open, yet to be made. What has been learned and understood and long ago passed by is looked upon as a new thought, a fresh idea, a different approach. Because your will is free, you can accept what has already happened at any time you choose, and only then will you realize that it was always there. As the Course emphasizes, you are not free to choose the curriculum or even the form in which you will learn it. You are free, however, to decide when you want to learn it, and as you accept it, it is already learned. Time really then goes backward to an instant so ancient that it is beyond all memory and past even the possibility of remembering. Yet because it is an instant that is relived again and again and still again, it seems to be now. And thus it is that pupil and teacher seem to come together in the present, finding each other as if they had not met before. The pupil comes at the right time to the right place. This is inevitable because he made the right choice in that ancient instant, which he now relives. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. A lot of us have heard that saying. Well, that's what he's saying here. The pupil comes at the right time to the right place. This is inevitable because he made the right choice in that ancient instant, which he now relives. So has the teacher, too, made an inevitable choice out of an ancient past. God's will is everything, but seems to take God's will in everything, but seems to take time in the working out. What could delay the power of eternity? When pupil and teacher come together, a teaching-learning situation begins, for the teacher is not really the one who does the teaching. God's teacher speaks to any two who join together for learning purposes. The Holy Spirit's doing the teaching for both of us. We're both learning and we're both teaching. The relationship is holy because of that purpose, and God has promised to send His Spirit into any holy relationship. In the teaching-learning situation, each one learns that giving and receiving are the same. The demarcation they have drawn between their roles, their minds, their bodies, their needs, their interests, and all the differences they thought separated them from one another, fade and grow dim and disappear. Those who would learn the same course share one interest and one goal. Those who would learn the same course share one interest and one goal. And thus, he who was the learner becomes a teacher of God Himself, for he has made the one decision that gave his teacher to him. He has seen in another person the same interests as his own. Wow, isn't that beautiful? And I didn't take the time to tell you where I'm at. I'm sitting on the banks of Buffalo Creek outside of Neosho, between Seneca and Neosho. And I wanted to read to you, and I wanted to tell you about another type of kale real quick, but I'm not finding it. Oh, here we go. This is Greenpeace Kale. It's a Brassica oleracea. Yes, this purple-stemmed Siberian kale is nutritious and delicious, producing crunchy, crispy leaves with a sweet flavor, made sweeter with frost, and only a hint of bitterness. Green, slightly blistered leaves have lobed margins and purple petioles, and measure 15.5 to 18.5 inches long and 5 to 8 inches wide. The variety hails from the Greenpeace Experimental Farm in British Columbia, Canada, a self-sufficient organic farming community formed in 1974 on Denman Island by Jim and Mary Boland, co-founders of the Greenpeace Environmental Organization. And it says 40 days from transplant, so that's pretty quick. Once you transplant, 40 days. All right, so we've spent a little longer than I usually like to spend, but be sure to do your lesson, a few times today. Maybe it says about 4 times. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this place. So be sure to watch your thoughts, and until tomorrow, thank you very much for joining me. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this place.